Hi, I'm Chris, and I have a story that sounds like it's about successful GED students, but it isn't.
Hi, I'm Drew, and I have a story that's finger looking good.
Hi, I'm Adri, and I have a story about why it's important to take head counts.
What does all this have to do with graduation? Find out in this week's episode of History Bluffs. Welcome to this week's graduation episode of History Bluffs, where truth is stranger than fiction. I want to welcome to the show, it's your host, Carlos.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show, History Bluffs. Well, like our announcer said, where truth is stranger than fiction. Straight from the internet, it's America's favorite midweek history-themed game show. I'm Carlos Rivera, your host for today. Let me tell you a little bit about the show if you've never seen it before. Count them three. Armchair historians will be given a single topic. They will tell you a story from history about that topic. Two of them will be telling you a factual story that really happened, but one of them will be making the whole thing up. In essence, they will be bluffing, hence the name. That's right. That's right, sound effects guy. That is crazy. All right. Now, before we get started with our little game, let's meet our armchair historians, get to know a little bit about them. Hey, Chris.
Hello, Carlos. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Chris. Now, I believe it was mentioned that today's topic is going to be graduation. Looking forward to hearing your facts or fiction about that, depending on whether you're the bluff or not. But, Chris, I got a question for you. If you could have any historical figure from history speak at a graduation you were attending, who would that figure be and what would you want them to talk about?
Ooh, boy. I would want Benjamin Franklin, and I would want him to talk about the idea that he never got to invent, the one thing that he thought of, maybe this could work, and never got around to inventing it.
Ooh, very fun. And if you could think of a thing right now that Benjamin Franklin could but never did invent, what right off the top of your head?
Oh, that's easy. Razor scooter.
Nice. He had electricity. He was halfway there. Just plug it into some wheels on a board stick. All right. Thank you, Chris. We'll be back with you in a little bit. Adriana, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Adriana.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Same question as for Chris. If you could invite any historical figure to, let's say, your college graduation, who would it be and what crazy topic would you want them to talk about, whether they knew about it or not?
Oh, gosh, that is a loaded question. Tina Fey.
Nice.
And I would want her to give a serious speech on hygiene.
Nice. The historical figure Tina Fey, the long dead Tina Fey, would be nice.
We remember
Hear
her well.
from her again. It was just 2 days ago that she was at the Chicago Theater doing her show.
Exactly.
People don't realize
Yes.
she's left us since
No,
then.
the thing is, she's so good, it's already history.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, okay.
Nice.
No, that's true.
Nice. That's impressive. That's a nice thing to say about Tina Fey. I'm sure she'd be pleased. Maybe we can get her on our show now. Drew!
Hey,
Hey, Drew. Drew, where are you right now?
I'm in Chicago.
Oh, I'm in Chicago, too. Not
Whoa.
like these two knuckleheads.
Oh.
Boo, everywhere but
Really?
Chicago.
We evened the playing field.
That's right. Hey, you know what we have? It's the first, well, not the first time, but it's one of the rare times where it's been half Chicago, half Orlando on this show. And I
It's a
like
war.
it. That's right. It's a war. Boom.
Let's fight.
What, you going to throw your palm trees at us, Orlando? Give me a break.
Palm trees and gators.
All right. Drew, same question. If you could have any historical figure at a graduation ceremony of yours, who would it be? And what crazy topic they're not an expert of would you want them to talk about?
Oh my goodness. Well, when I was in college, one of the other campuses in the same city Mr. Rogers was their speaker, and I was so jealous that they got to hear Mr. Rogers. And so I wish I could have gone to that college or kidnapped him and have him speak in mine.
Yes. Wait a second. Wait a
Solid
second.
one.
Are you saying Mr. Rogers is dead?
I am.
No!
He lives on in our hearts. And that's what his speech was. It was just like, be kind, and like all those things that you learned when you watched him as a child.
I see. So he was phoning it in?
Yeah.
No shots fired on Mr. Rogers. He was great. As are you all. Okay. You know what? You guys, this was great, but you know what else will be greater? Adam, you told us the topic already, right?
I did. I mentioned it, and we had that sweet intro title this thing here. We got, for those audio listeners who can't see it, it's our logo, but with a graduation cap. I worked so hard on it.
Nice. What color is that? What color is that, would you say, Adam?
Well, gold, or in the wrong lighting, I'd go with urine, but
Okay.
you know.
I'm going to go
gold,
team urine on that,
or
Adam.
go-
Let's
okay.
do better, Adam. We
Yeah,
can do
that's-
better, can't we?
We'll aim
All
high,
right,
Carlos.
folks at home,
We'll aim
folks
high.
watching live, folks out watch later, folks that are listening with their earballs. Listen to me very carefully. The historians were given the topic of graduation prior to the show, but shortly prior to the show, not too long ago. And they've been crafting their historical information to give us for tonight, okay? Using either research or the lies they made up, depending on whether they're the bluff or one of the truth tellers. You know, you may hear some real stuff. You may hear lies and fantasy. Actually, you're going to hear both. Okay. Now, but we do have rules, and let's see those rules on the screen right now, Mr. Announcer.
Let's do it. We've got rules. This is a game show, folks. Here's some rules, Carlos. Let 'em have
All
it.
right, our rules. Historians are inspired by the topic. True stories are factual. Bluff story is fictional. No audience help is allowed. What does that mean? The true stories, our truth tellers can embellish a little bit. They are funny people, of course, so they can have a little fun with it, but for the most part, it should be as factual as possible. Although, you know, they may embellish what the people back in time were thinking. That's okay. But our bluffer is going to be telling a lie. It's going to be mostly a lie. That can have a little hints of truth to it, but for the most part, that's going to be a lie. And no audience help is allowed. That being said, we don't want you guys out there. If you're like a history guy and you're a history gal and you're like, I know exactly which one's telling the lie, please don't spoil it for the rest of us. Keep that to yourself until the end of the show where we ask you. And it'll be fun. We'll give you a chance to spoil it, but it'll be like mere seconds before we ourselves spoil it. Mere seconds. That's your window. That's for you, spoilers. Okay. You know what? And now I think we got over the rules. I think it's time to go into our rounds because, hey, this show has not one, not two, but 3 rounds where each of our contestants are going to be able to speak about the things. You're going to have 3 chances to convince us that they're either the truth teller or a bluffer, but every time they're going to have a little less time.
Carlos, I'll put up the round tracker right above you there for those watching. We can keep track of the rounds and see where we are in the show.
Exactly. Look at that. State of the art. We got it for a Best Buy that was closing. We bought these. They're ours now. All right. Without further ado, let's get to that first round, Mr. Announcer.
Let's do round number 1.
All right. One more thing before we get started. If you are watching live, or even if you're not, please comment, because if you're commenting live, we may put your comments on the screen. But if we don't, that doesn't mean no one's watching. That just means our announcer's being lazy or using the John. Okay.
Very possible.
Let's get this party started right quickly, right? Chris,
Yes.
we're going to start with you. You're going to start telling us about your graduation topic. You're going to have, I'm going to say 75 seconds on the clock. When you hear the bong, you can begin. And when you hear the gong, that's it. Your time's up. Are you ready?
Okay. I am ready.
All right, Mr. Announcer, let's give him the timer.
Okay. So I mentioned it sounds like successful GED students, but it's not. This is the graduated dropper. Okay. It's the little pipette that they use in science. The French chemist Francois de Croizet developed the bathylometer and the alkalometer early precursors to the pipette in the 1700s. In the 1800s, the Pasteur pipette, yes, Pasteur, as we all know, done other things too, but this little eyedropper with a rubber end at one, they call it a teat, right? And he's used to create, move liquid samples between those trays, right? But without getting them exposed to samples to the outside environment. So while it can preserve the purity of the sample, it had no accuracy at all. It couldn't be used for measurement. Hence, in the 1930s, the Carlsberg pipette was developed in Denmark. The scientists there, they created these little glass tubes they did it themselves actually with a little flame, and they made a capillary with a constriction, and it set a volume accurate down to 0.001. That's 1/1000th of a milliliter, but it was hard to clean, and they had to suck up the samples in their mouth. 1957, German scientist Heinrich Schnitger. We'll hear what he had to do in round 2.
Heinrich's going to have to wait, Chris. Now, it sounds like to me, it's been a while since I've been in a science class, but it sounds like you're going graduation in terms of gradients or graduating of some substances or some such. Am I kind of right on that?
Sir. You are correct,
all right.
sir.
I'm correct. Adriana, is Chris correct?
I don't
Or
think
should he
so.
come correct?
I think he needs to come correct. Here's what I think. I think that Chris went and looked at the cast of Inglourious Bastards and pulled out names of French people and German people and said, okay, how can I link this to graduation, and found a pipette. That's what I gathered from that. Now I want to watch Inglourious Bastards, so here we are.
Great movie. Drew, is Chris telling us a great movie that's not true, or is he spitting facts?
I'm thinking this is just a lot of mumbo jumbo. I was confused right from that French accent at the beginning, and that just kind of from there I just really couldn't understand a word he was saying. So just on that account alone, I feel like this is all just a bunch of BS.
A bunch of BS.
The only English word that I heard was teat the whole time.
Oh boy.
That's
Chris?
the Chicago pollution coming down and clogging up your ears.
Oh,
Chris, you may
that's
have a
funny.
BA and BS, and you may be teats up right now. But we'll see if one of the others may be one of the bluffers instead, because now we're going to Adriana. Adriana, you will also have 75 seconds on the clock. When you hear the boom, you may begin. When you hear the gong, you got to stop. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Announcer, let's hear that beautiful boom footage.
All right. So always take a head count. Grad night or grad bash is going to be what I'm talking about, as it's sometimes known, is a sacred American tradition where theme parks across the country shut down at sunset and reopen exclusively to welcome thousands of Noxzema-wearing, horny 18-year-olds, future pre-med dropouts to come and literally and figuratively ride emotional roller coasters. Now, tonight's story took place at the famed San Diego Zoo in 1976. Popular local band The Zeros had just finished their headlining performance at the park, and the park was set to close shortly after. As the zoo was emptying out, the buses filled up and returned to their respective schools and hotels and whatnot. Now, since the majority of grads were already 18, and since it was the 1970s, no one really bothered to do a head count or an attendance list, and it was brought to no one's attention that a group of 5 Fallbrook Union High School students did not board the bus and never left the zoo. Now, the 5 troublemakers were 2 sisters and 3 friends.
Oh, we got the gong here. We got
All right.
the gong. Everyone
All right.
likes to bite the nip of that gong. Be careful
Sorry.
with that gong. That gong will
Sorry.
bite back. That gong will bite back. All
Yes, it
right.
will.
And that's to you too, Chris. All right. Speaking of Chris, we heard about some grad night shenanigans, but way back in the 50s and or the 60s? Question mark?
70s. The 70s.
70s? Question mark,
76.
exclamation point. Chris, what
And-
do you think?
I picked up on that same thing. 1976, you're telling us that they had coordinated buses that the students went along with and got on buses graduation night in 1976? I don't think so. I have several siblings that graduated in the 70s, and them and their friends would not have willingly gotten into a line to go onto a bus and follow rules, especially on graduation night. They're done. They're no more teachers, no more books. Get out of it. Don't tell me what to do.
No, grad night, in my defense, grad night happens like several days before your actual graduation.
It's
All
the
right,
newfangled
Drew.
Does
way
not
to do
change
it.
my opinion.
Drew.
Does not change my opinion.
Drew, Chris doesn't think school buses existed in the 60s. Do you confirm that or deny it? Or do you have another part of
It's
Adriana's story you want to attack?
1976.
70,
1976.
60, same thing.
60s, 70s, you know what? I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, because what I do know
Thank you.
didn't exist in 1976 was the internet and smartphones, where they could have just texted these 5 kids and said, "Where you at?" And they would have replied, "We're still locked in the zoo." So I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt there, and the fact that now we know it happened before graduation. They could, that's how they got them to go, because they would say, "You're not getting your diploma if you goof off and don't go, but also
Exactly.
you gotta be good students."
Yes.
Okay, so what Drew's saying is that he's giving you the benefit of the doubt because of the existence of smartphones in 1976. So that's your defender, Adriana. That's who's.
I'll take it.
So I would. Okay. Speaking of misinformation, Drew, it's your turn now to talk about graduations. You can begin when you hear the ba-boom, and you can hit the brakes when you hear that gong. Are you ready?
Yes.
Announcer, hook 'em up.
What do Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, Walt Disney, John D. Rockefeller, and Princess Di all have in common? They all dropped out of school before graduating. Well, I have another well-known name to add to the list, a Southern gentleman by the name of Harlan Sanders. But this isn't a rags to riches overnight sensation type of story. No, my friends, our hero had to persevere. He had to wait for his success. Harlan was born in 1890 in Henryville, Indiana, where his parents owned a farm. Harlan was the oldest of 3 siblings, and when his father died in 1895, the mother went to work in a tomato cannery to support the family. 5-year-old Harlan was then left to look after and cook for his younger siblings. By the age of 7, he was already skilled with bread and vegetables and starting to improve with cooking meat. In 1902, the mother remarried. Harlan did not get along with the new stepfather, and a year later, at age 12, Harlan dropped out of the 7th grade and went to work as a farmhand. As he entered his teen years, he continued to experiment and embrace his fondness for cooking and became quite skilled with chicken.
All right. We're going to throw 5 points up for Drew, not only stopping before his time was up, but stopping 3 full seconds before his time was up, because that's what you do. Because when you're early, you're on time, folks. That's how we do our game show here. All right. Wow. That was a talk about Harlan Sanders. Like, he said a bunch of famous people. Then he said Harlan Sanders. Chris, the guy didn't even graduate. Didn't Drew get the memo? Was Drew left out of the email about the topic?
He clearly was. And I think that he was so left out on that he was just fishing for ideas. And he heard my answer to your opening question about what historical figure I would want to have speak. And he threw him in his fake story. Ben Franklin was the first name that he mentioned. He wasn't even thinking of Ben Franklin until I mentioned it when you asked me the question. And then he talks about, in 1890 that he was born in Henryville, Indiana. And interestingly, if you take Harlan, every one of those letters is available in Henryville, Indiana. So I think he just knows someone from Henryville, Indiana, probably his wife. And he said, I'm going to make a name out of that. And he came up with Harlan Sanders. So I know obviously Harlan Sanders is the real guy from KFC, but and then he's skilled with bread and vegetables. What skill does it take to be good with bread and vegetables? What skill? Come on.
He was 5 years old.
I don't care. I ate bread when I was 5.
All right. First of all, -5 points to Chris for spoilers. Okay, you let Drew tell his story. You don't tell his story, Chris. Drew tells his story. All right.
My bad.
I won't
Yeah.
say what the spoiler was, but spoilers number one. Otherwise, agree completely. Okay, is Drew the Kaiser Soze tonight? Might be. Adriana, what do you think?
Well, since Chris spoiled it, the thing that I'm pulling out is there are 0 vegetables at KFC in the Sanders repertoire. So I'm baffled. I hope that we're wrong. I hope that really it's Bernie Sanders, like great uncle or something, and this takes a crazy twist. But that's where I'm at so far.
All
no
right.
further questions.
Negative 10 points for doubling down on the spoils.
He said it in his open.
Negative 5 points, you don't double down on it.
Carlos,
Okay?
go back. Carlos, go watch the tape. He said it in his open.
Did he?
Oh man, it's a good old fashioned chicken fight.
I don't know because he didn't mention at any point in the middle or at the end. Whatever. Those points stand. All right. And that brings us
Look
to the
above you,
end
Carlos. Look
of
above
round
you.
one. Yeah, I see it. It's bright. It's in this room with me. It's blinding me. It's so bright.
The
and
round
that means it's
tracker.
the end of round one, which means it's the beginning of round two.
Here comes round 2.
Where the negative points are doubled. All right.
He's cruel.
Okay. Well, don't break the rules that I make up in my head. Adriana,
Yes.
it's your turn to continue with your story, which I believe was about grad night because you said
Yes.
grad night.
Yes.
So that's not a spoiler. So when you hear the boom, you can begin. But this time, you only have 60 seconds on the clock. So you have less time to continue your story. When you hear the boom begin, when you hear the gong end. Ready?
Understood. Let's
All
go.
right, announcer, hit it.
All right, so spoiler alert, Benjamin Franklin is not in this story. Now, going back, the group of troublemakers were 2 sisters who were twins and 3 brothers. I have their names, but it's kind of irrelevant to the story. The thing that these 5 individuals decided to do at the beginning of the night was take some shrooms. And by the time the night was wrapping up, the shrooms started kicking in, and as everybody was exiting the park, they began to panic, and they ducked into a dark enclave, which eventually led them down into an employee entrance. And then the authorities believe that this is how they were able to access the safari enclosure, where the 5 would try to survive the night among the animals that roam freely in the area at all times. Cut to the next morning. The parents of the 5 missing teens realized that their kids never came home, and they began to call each other. Eventually, they contacted the school. And I'll pick up in round 3.
Uh-oh. Missing kids, enclosures at a zoo might get dicey, or just the kind of adventure story that may distract us from the fact that it might be a bluff. Drew?
Well, this is a horrible sequel to Dazed and Confused. I'll tell you that. I did pick up on one thing. It might have been a little mistake on Adri's part here. In her first round, she said they were two sisters and 3 friends, and now it's 2 twin sisters and 3 brothers. And so
Did I say brothers? They're just friends.
Oh,
Yeah. It was 2 twin sisters and 3 friends
okay. I'm gonna
that were male. They were
How
males.
can they be brothers if they can't be friends?
But taking some mushrooms and so again, like 76, no Wi-Fi, no smartphones, but mushrooms aplenty, I guess, at the San Diego Zoo. So
Yep. Nothing better to do.
all right, it checks out.
All right, Chris, does Drew have to be on mushrooms to believe Adriana's story? What do you think?
Oh man, absolutely. First of all, she did the classic bluff technique of filling time at the beginning because she realized, I didn't create enough BS to fill up that whole 60-second slot. So I'm going to start off by saying, spoiler alert, Ben Franklin's not in this story, which has nothing to do with her story. She's just filling time because she didn't have enough time to make up a full story. So that's number one. And then taking shrooms, how stereotyping the entire class of 1976. Come on, we're better than that. We are better than that, people.
Erroneous.
And then you're telling me You're telling me that
Adriana's down.
she's on
Adriana's
shrooms.
down.
She's on shrooms herself. But the next morning, the parents didn't notice that the kids are missing until the next morning. Come on, not in 1976. They were
what if the
laissez-faire
parents
back
were
then,
on
but
shrooms?
maybe they were.
All right, Chris, outing his graduation year.
Wow,
All right. Throwing himself under the bus in order to throw Adriana under the bus. I like it. What I like more, hearing more about Drew's now spoiled story, but we'll see how he salvaged the spoilage. Drew, when you hear the boom, you can boom again.
Between 1906 and 1930, Harlan drifted all over the place, working a variety of odd jobs, starting with being a streetcar conductor in Indiana. He then falsified his birth certificate and enlisted in the Army, where he served as a teamster in Cuba. After his service commitment ended, he moved to Alabama, worked as a blacksmith apprentice and a fireman for the railroad. He also dabbled in studying law by mail. The railroad eventually took him to Tennessee, but he was fired for insubordination. From there, he sold insurance. He started a ferry boat company, Michelin tires. And then in 1930, during the Great Depression, Shell Oil offered Harlan a service station in North Corbin, Kentucky, rent-free in return for a percentage of sales. As a side hustle, he began serving chicken, dishes, and other meals to travelers, and word spread of his delicious chicken. So much so that in 1935, the governor of Kentucky bestowed upon Harlan the honorary title of a Kentucky colonel. Colonel Sanders was born.
Boom! Boom! We could have just announcer. What'd you think of that story, announcer?
That was insane. I was on the edge of my seat.
You were real excited, huh? I saw that. You even typed in a little. What'd you type in there?
just typing notes. Gotta keep
No.
track.
What'd you type specifically for Drew? What'd you type in there?
Oh, nothing. That's announcer stuff, host. You
No,
wouldn't understand.
I saw something. You typed in KFC. Negative 50 points for the announcer.
Oh,
I expect better from you. Yeah, you keep that warp sound going to negative 50.
that'll just take the show too long. Well, I'll summarize.
All right, announcer's failure notwithstanding, very exciting tale if it's real. Even more exciting story if it's not. Adriana, what do you think? Do you think that Colonel Sanders, that this is what happened with him, or is this just a tale made on the old Mississippi?
I think there's a lot of fluff there. I've never heard of him working on an oil rig. The first KFC was actually in Louisiana or something crazy like that. So I think that there's a lot of fluff going into this story to make it sound plausible, but I'm kind of leaning towards there being a bluff there.
A lot of flim, flam, fluff,
Whoa.
bluff going on right there. Chris, what do you think?
Well, I thought it was interesting that he talks about from 1906 to 1930 for 24 years. He was drifting all over the place, right? But he ends up running a streetcar in Indiana, where he said he was born in the same hometown as his wife, Henryville, Indiana, in 19. So what was he, tethered? He was walking around like a dog in his backyard on a leash. It was and then he had to go back there. And then he started, like AG said, he started naming off all these 77 different jobs. I think he was just Googling things jobs that you get after you graduate high school, and he came up with this list. And he put it all in his fake story.
Yep.
A tale called A Streetcar Named the Colonel. Oh, Drew.
It happens.
Oh, Drew. Is it true? We don't know if Drew is telling the truth. Drew is true. Uh-oh. I think I'm on mushrooms. All right. Which brings us to Chris. 76. Chris, okay, it's your round two time to tell us more of your tale about graduated cylinders or whatever it's going to be about.
Graduated dropper.
Okay, calm down. When you hear the boom, you can boom again. Okay,
so German scientist Heinrich Schnittger, at the University of Marburg, for decades, the Carlsberg pipette, which had been invented in Denmark, was crude and inefficient instrument. It lacked accuracy. The research literally had to suck liquid up into their mouth through this thing. There were all sorts of stories about scientists accidentally taking mouthfuls of dangerous and foul substances into their mouths. Schnitger became obsessed with developing a new pipette that would more accurate and reliable. And he took a metal syringe and he added a spring and an end stop. And with the simple press and release of this plunger, his pipette could collect a precise volume of liquid, and a second pressing of the plunger would simply eject the liquid. His colleagues knew instantly what they were looking at. It was mind-blowing, and they knew it meant no more sucking of these liquids into their mouth. So the pipette labs would never be the same.
All right. Drew, is Chris plunging further into deception?
Well, I mean, there's always a need to eliminate sucking, so that seems plausible. But this name, I mean, what was it? Heimlich
Schnitger.
Snickers? I think you're just making up names. I think you just like you were like in the checkout aisle at the grocery store and you saw the Snickers bar and you were like, that's
Yeah.
oh,
Yep.
And then this whole this syringe with the spring in it, like I think you like are talking about like the invention of the ballpoint pen by Bic or something. It sounds like.
All right. Well, Drew's saying that Chris is our expert at sucking. What do you think, Adriana?
Oh.
I kind of agree. I think that Chris really focused on adding a lot of very exotic names and words, and just to kind of like throw people off and stuff, and talking about syringes and the Snickers and the Snickers and the this and the that. I don't know. It's classic Chris. That's what he does when he bluffs. So.
Oh boy, that's what he does when he bluffs. So looks like Adriana can read your hand, Chris. Oh boy. Well, you know what? We're going to see who's bluffing, because guess what? We just completed round 2, which means we only have one more round to go. And maybe finally we'll find out what institution Drew may be referring to in his story. We don't know if we ignore the spoilers. We'll find out now as we go to round 3. Announcer, take us there.
Let's go to round 3.
All right. We're in round 3. Okay, where the points are tripled now. Ooh,
Whoa.
negative points are tripled. What does that mean? That means that Drew's going to go first this time. Drew, this is your last chance to tell us your story about this enigmatic Colonel Sanders. What is he related to? We don't know. You're going to tell us right now, but you're only going to have 45 seconds to do it. When you hear the boom, begin.
Jump to 1940. The Colonel is now 50, and he finalizes his secret recipe of 11 herbs and spices. World War II slowed down business, though, so he wasn't quite rich yet. He continued to just sell it locally. Then in 1952, he franchised his secret recipe as Kentucky Fried Chicken for the first time in, of all places, not Louisiana, Utah. Sales at that location tripled in 1 year. At 65, he decided to travel the U.S. looking for other franchise opportunities. He fully embraced the persona of the Colonel with the white suit, the string tie, the goatee, and everything that showcased his Southern hospitality. In 1964, at the age of 73, he sold his company for $2 million. Not bad for a 7th grade dropout.
Boom! All right, the moral of the story, kids, drop out. You'll make more money. Drop out and invent amazing chicken. All right. Is that the moral of our story, Adriana? Is that what we should take away, that dropping out's cool?
Well, I mean, it seems to be working out for him, so maybe. But I think that there are some bluffing factors there. First of all, I'm almost certain that KFC started in Louisiana. I've believed that my whole life, and I refuse to turn my back on that. And $2 million for a franchise restaurant, even in 1973, $2 million does not seem adequate enough. I am calling
1964.
1964?
He was 73 years old.
Oh, you're right. I took notes down wrong. You're right. Well, still, 1964, $2 million is, I mean, it's not nothing, but it doesn't seem adequate. I call your bluff, sir.
Okay. Yep, calls her bluff. Also, 1964, he was 73. Chris, What do you think?
Well, I think that Drew tripped over himself on his timeline here. When he already said in his round two story that the governor of Kentucky had bestowed upon Harlan Sanders the title of Kentucky Colonel. Okay, and then it was several years later that he started putting the spices in. What the guy who was just making bland, regular, fried chicken like everyone else, but they decided to give him the. I submit if this anything remotely true in here, it would be that because his seasoning was so good, that's why the governor of Kentucky bestowed him on this title. But that it didn't happen in the timeline that Drew is portraying this fake story. So therefore, I don't believe it. Timeline disconnected.
Oh boy. Timeline disconnected. No, it's not disconnected. Our followers, they're at the edge of their seats trying to hear the rest of our stories, which brings us to Chris. Chris, you're going to have your final round three. It's your final chance to tell us what you're talking about. Graduated tubes? What are we talking about here?
Graduated droppers. Pipette.
Oh, all right. Oh, the suck stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Finish your story of suckage, Chris, when you hear the boom begin.
So it's May 1957, and Heinrich Schnitger, applied for a patent on his pipette. It's a device for the fast and exact pipetting measuring of small liquid volumes. He was awarded the patent in 1961, April 1961. He licensed it to a Hamburg, Germany-based firm called Eppendorf, and it soon became ubiquitous at labs and hospitals all around the world. It made their scientists' jobs more precise and reliable. Sadly, Schnitger didn't have long to enjoy his success. In 1964, he drowned while swimming in a mountain lake in Bavaria. But today, he's still remembered because any scientist, medical researcher, lab technician can all thank Heinrich Schnitger for not having to suck it up themselves.
All right. No suckage at the end of that tale. Just a lot of adamance and determination. Hell no, he sounded pretty legit, Drew. What do you think?
Well, I think he's stealing from my story because 1964, he died the same year that Colonel Sanders sold his company for $2 million. So I think there's like some kind of connection there. And another connection that I didn't pick up on until now is graduated droppers. You know who didn't graduate? Colonel Sanders. He dropped out.
Wow, it's the same story.
No, it's not the same story at all.
Precisely.
No, it's a different story. No,
not a detail miss.
No, Chris.
Venn diagram is
no,
circle.
Drew is trying to say that Chris is the Kaiser Soze, and Chris was saying that Drew was the Kaiser Soze. Adriana, who's the Kaiser Soze here?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. On one end, we have Drew that told a story that's been told so many times before, but jumbled it all up, and then we have Chris speaking German and French in a Bavarian castle lake. I don't know. All I know is that what I took away from that was that the Eppendorf sounds a lot like the EpiPen.
Oh.
And that's a little bit relative to what we've been talking about. So now I have mixed emotions when it comes to Chris.
I get that a lot.
Oh boy, Eppendorf does golf, huh? Oh, mixed emotions. Got feeling, catching feels here. It's crazy. Well, you know what, Adriana, you can work out all those feelings, all those emotions. You got a lot of emotions like Mariah.
Yeah.
You can sing them out right now. You are our final historian. You have 45 seconds on the clock to tell us the end of the tale of the Grad Night Mushroom Eaters.
Yes, I got to
you hear
blow
the
through
boom?
this.
Please begin.
Let's go. Okay, so early the next morning, all the parents woke up. They realized their kids never came home. They called the school. The school didn't have a head count, so they called the park. And meanwhile, the parents went from their homes to the park. They started searching the park. Eventually, when the sun came up, they were able to search the safari. And immediately, they started finding torn clothing, like pretty much everywhere. Not too long after they started searching, they found the sisters. They were hiding in a tree. They were unharmed. They were okay. But then they found, a couple hours later, they found two of the guys that they were with hiding in a cave. And then a couple hours later, they found the fifth guy floating in one of the ponds that the larger animals would drink from, and he had died. So,
oh my God.
long story short, do a head count before you go.
Jesus.
So much more. There's so much more to that story. But let's just say this is the reason why we do head counts at schools, for field trips, for pretty much every reason.
All right, we'll let you tell the rest in the BTS part of the show. The
Oh my God, okay.
Extras that
BS.
don't exist, everyone. Oh, Chris, please elaborate on that burn.
Well, it just occurred to me at the very end. It just occurred to me that Adri clearly has recently seen the Anchorman movie, and Ron Burgundy's adventure in the San Diego Zoo is basically what she's describing here. That I still get back to, it wasn't until the next day that the parents realized that the kids didn't come home. It's not prom night, it's grad night, or whatever she called it at the top, the fake names came up with. I don't buy that. No.
Hey, look, I wasn't around in the 70s, but I heard that people didn't even lock their doors back then. It was a different world.
As the French would say, no.
Oh, wow. Chris is not staying classy, San Diego. Drew, what do you think of Adri's story?
Yeah, it's a tragic ending to what should have been a joyous night. But I wonder, is it kind of like a Titanic thing? Like, was there not room in the tree for more than two people? Like the sisters, like they were like, you guys go find someplace else to wait this out. We're taking the tree, and they ended up in a cave. And so, I tell you what, that just seems like unfair.
The Titanic experience.
All right, well, you know what? Drew is so upset as to the contents of the story, so it sounds like he believes you because you've given him feelings. He's got feelings based on the sadness of your story. So either you're telling the truth or you're a great bluffer, which brings me to letting you all know that we're at the end of our 3 rounds. What? That means that it's time to figure out and reveal who our bluff is. But before we do, number one, at home, watching right now, even listening, if you're listening, yell it out. If you're watching on the YouTube or on the Twitch or whatever, type in the comments, say who you think it might be, while I ask these 3 knuckleheads who they think it is. Chris, who do you think is the bluffer right now? Final chance to comment on your fellow 2 historians.
Well, I don't believe either of them, and I just did a little tic-tac-toe thing on my, on my score sheet here. I'm going with Adri as the bluff.
Oh, is there a reason why?
No, I just picked between the two of them. I think they're both bluffing, but I only have to pick one, so I'm only allowed to pick one. So,
all right.
To me, Drew is less believable. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think Adri's bluffing.
I think you're saying they're both lacking in character. That's fine.
Carlos, for a guy whose entire story was about science, that was the most unscientific method.
I mean, 50-50, flip of a coin. That's science. That's probability, which is a math, which is a neighbor of science.
All right.
Adri, who do you think? Who do you think might be the bluff and why?
I'm gonna go with Drew. Drew is bluffing.
Okay. Any particular reason or just a general sense of bluff?
Honestly, it's like my gut. Like, I know the Colonel Sanders story, and he said some things that I just can't get past. So I'm just going to go with my gut on that one.
Yeah. Wow. You would think that in a KFC, if the tale you told was real, that one KFC they painted on the wall. This is the story of the Colonel. Yet I can't recall ever seeing that tale on the wall. Maybe I just didn't go to the right KFC, or maybe you're the damn bluff. Who knows, Drew? But you can't think you're the bluff. So, Drew, who do you think is the bluff?
Well, I mean, Adriana won me over with that sad Lifetime movie that she told. So from the very, very beginning here, Chris just started like speaking like another language that I just couldn't comprehend, and it was coming from all over the place. And like, this is a history show, and he comes in with like a science and a math lesson, and I didn't sign up for this. I think.
Wow. We didn't come here for Bill Nye, Chris. All right. with you and your graduation flasks or whatever. Listen, everyone. Now, audience members and everyone listening at home, you've heard all three of our historians and why they think it's someone else. You've heard their reasons, but now it's time for you to make that decision. Write them down right now. Last chance. If you already knew, write that down. Write down why. And meanwhile, I'm going to go to our announcer. And announcer, bring us home. You know who it is. I don't.
Okay, that's
no one else
true.
here does. You do. Tell us who it is, announcer.
All right, I have the secret knowledge. All right, I'm going to ask you to step off of our virtual stage, Mr. Host Carlos, if you
Yep.
would. All right, I've got our potential bluffers. Our historians are all lined up. Is your bluff tonight going to be Chris? Could your bluff be Drew? Or could your bluff be Adri? I shall reveal now. Behold, the whole time, your bluff has been Adri.
What?
Well played,
sorry.
well played. No,
Okay.
you're good, you're good.
Oh, that's insane.
There it
That's insane because I don't know what Chris is. Chris lost me half the story, but I thought it was him. So I'm genuinely surprised. I would have believed all the stuff Adri said about grad night.
We had some guesses from the audience, believe it or not. We had a Chris was bluffing. Thank you, Lauren, for
Thank you,
chiming in with
Lauren.
that. But you turned out to be wrong. But you know what? She mended that. Very convincing, Adri. You did. That's a top-notch job. Now,
Lauren's
this
covering
Drew,
her butt.
Drew's got a fan out there. Congratulations. We got Anthony saying he's got a crush on this Drew guy. So it looks
Who
like we
doesn't?
have a fan. I mean, really, we all do. That's why he's here.
Wow.
All right, so good work, everybody, and thank you, audience, for giving a little voice.
Adri, was there any truth to your story at all? You just
No.
completely just decided because honestly, like I was surprised at first. I should have known because I didn't think grad night was a thing until like the last, at least the 90s, maybe the 80s, and I honestly thought it was only an Orlando thing, which it very well may be.
No. Well, that's the true part. There is grad night at Disneyland in California.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because
So
then I know
that was
Universal took it on too. My school did a grad weekend because we were special.
Yep. Well,
And we stayed overnight. And I
got a yes
stole
and
their
from the audience.
VHS tape before the buses went back home, so they had no movie to watch. Yeah. I'm gangsta like that. All right. Everyone, thank you for coming. Thanks to our three historians, and thanks to everyone watching at home, and thanks to everyone listening right now. Everyone, tune in next time when the topic is brand new and another bluff tries to fool us all. Announcer, do we know what next week's topic is going to be?
We do not know yet. You're going to have to tune in and find out. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you will get an announcement when it is posted.
All right, and so will our historians, and they won't know until then. Join us again next week, next time. Thank you for joining us tonight here at History Bluffs, where truth is stranger than fiction. I mean fiction. Oh no. Scribbity-bee.